Recently, someone asked me if it's okay for Christians to have a DNR. You know what that means? I don't think they were asking me about the Department of Natural Resources. That's the DNR that I grew up with. But instead, the medical issue, a do not resuscitate, a DNR order. I'm not sure if you personally had that experience for your own medical directives or someone you love, but a DNR basically says, if things go south medically, we won't try to resuscitate someone. And the question is that okay? Can we just let someone go into the arms of God, or do we have to use every possible medical intervention to save and sustain their life? Ooh, that's a tough question. Obviously, we turn to the Bible, which is the source of all of our truth, and DNRs don't come up in the book of Genesis or Exodus or Leviticus or any of the other books of the Bible. So we kind of have to search for biblical principles that would help frame this issue and lead us to a good, God-pleasing answer. I can think of two in particular that would apply as you personally think about, is it okay for me to have a DNR order? The first comes from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, where God says this: "There is no God besides me. I put to death, and I bring to life." In this passage, God is reminding us that He is the author, creator, and ender of life. He's the one that creates life with that amazing connection between sperm and egg. Every life belongs to God. And He's the one that has the right to decide whether that life lasts for a month, a year, a decade, or a century. I'm the one who brings life, and I'm the one who puts to death. And so if ever we would try to interrupt that process, for example, with the commandment, you shall not murder, we would be infringing on what belongs to God, which is the authority and right to begin and end life. So how does that apply? There are some times when a DNR order might be trying to get in the way of a life that God is bringing to an end. If a person is really dying just because of science and technology and advancements, there are ways that we can mechanically sustain a life that God is really ending. Like all signs of heart and brain and all other functions are coming to an end. God is ready to call that person home, but we can hook someone up to a machine to make the lungs breathe and the heartbeat and everything else. And so I think that's a good principle. Sometimes we don't have to do everything medically possible if God is bringing a life to an end. Life, in the end, belongs to God. But there's a second principle we want to keep in mind as we make this big medical decision, and it's the idea that just because a life doesn't have a high quality does not mean that it doesn't matter to God. Sometimes people want a DNR order, like, don't stop me because I don't want to live life unless I'm as healthy and cognizant and strong as I used to be. I don't want to live in some weak state where people have to take care of me. But just because a life is weak or maybe inferior to the quality that it was before, that doesn't mean that it's not a life that matters to God. It's the same issue that comes up when we find out, we take the ultrasound and they run the test and we find out the baby in the womb is going to have some medical complications, some maybe brain malfunctions. But we don't terminate that life. We should not terminate that life just because it doesn't have the same quality of life that someone else might have. The same thing applies to the end of life, just like it does to the beginning. God may be sustaining a life, but you might not be as strong and competent as you were before. That does not give us the right to violate Deuteronomy chapter 32. God is the one who begins life, and He is the one who ends it. So, get back to the basic question. Is it okay for a Christian to have a DNR order? The complex tension is, it depends. To have a do not resuscitate order because you honor the God who might be ending a life is absolutely okay for Christians. You could sign that piece of paper, you could check the box and write down your name. But if the motivation of a DNR order is, I just don't want to live life unless I'm as strong as I was in my prime, well, then we want to check our hearts and allow God to end life when He chooses to see fit. I don't know if you like that answer. Like so many things in the Christian life that the Bible doesn't address specifically, it takes some tension and nuance and wisdom and discernment and balance. But at the end of the day, I just pray that you believe these powerful and clear words of Deuteronomy 32. There's only one God. He's the amazing God who creates life, and He's the sovereign God who decides when to end life.